Hey everybody, welcome to the Morning Devo with Bo 9:21. A little late today. It's a beautiful day to get out and do a little running. I don't know if you call what I do running though. It's more like a total jog. I hate to call it running, but hey, May 25th, it's an all POW day right there. And that means that we're going to be done with this book. Nehemiah, done. Chapter 13, as you see right there. We're finishing up the book, which is great. You could also check out all the archives that we do at Bo Willette on my YouTube channel. It's all right there. Tons of material for you as far as books of the Bible go. And check it out. And if you've never gone through the Bible, man, now's a good time to do it, right? And kind of learn a little bit about how the flow of the Bible is and kind of how we understand God so much better when we simply just go through the scriptures. So in Nehemiah, the last chapter, we get a little bit about Nehemiah's various reforms. And we kind of learn a little bit about Nehemiah some more. I mean, what a neat guy. Here, he's the cupbearer of the king. He is a Israelite, and his heart is to get back there and help construct the wall of Jerusalem. And through that, they have incredible challenges and successes, but they stay focused on their mission, their call, which is really a good word always for us to stay kind of focused on our call as well. So it says that on the same day as the book of Moses was being read to the people, the passage was found that said no Ammonite or Moabite should ever be permitted to enter the assembly of God. For they had not provided the Israelites with food and water or in the wilderness. Instead, they hired Balaam to curse them though our God turned the curse into a blessing. When this passage of the law was read, all those of foreign descent were immediately excluded from the assembly. So we get the idea that they're really wanting to follow line for line, word for word, the statutes and laws that are in the book of Moses, what we know as the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. This is, again, the kind of point of Nehemiah is the idea of going back to where we messed up. Hey, where did we get off the beam? And let's kind of go back and figure it out and get back on. And they are now looking at the law of God, reading it and going, man, you know what? We don't do that. Let's do that. And I love that attitude of just like, hey, this is what it says. Let's kind of get back to that and get on the ball. Let's kind of focus on that. And that's neat. I think that's something that, we can do daily for sure, is to kind of read the Bible and go, hey, that's an area that really I don't do. And that's an area I really could work on. And I just love that. And the action's just immediate, it sounds like, right? Hey, Moabites, Ammonites, it's time. You guys got to leave the assembly. When this passage of the law was read, and then they took out those that were not part of Israel. Before this had happened, Eliashib, the priest, who had been appointed as supervisor of the storerooms of the temple to our God, and who was also a relative of Tobiah, had converted a large storage room and placed it at Tobiah's disposal. The room had previously been used for storing the grain offerings and the frankincense, various articles for the temple, and the tithes of grain, new wine, and olive oil, which were prescribed for the Levites, the singers, and the gatekeepers, as well as the offerings for the priest. I was not in Jerusalem at that time, for I had returned to King Artaxerxes of Babylon in the 32nd year of his reign, though I later asked him permission to return. When I arrived back in Jerusalem, I learned about Eliashib's evil deed in providing Tobiah with a room in the courtyards of the temple of God. I became very upset and threw all of Tobiah's belongings out of the room. Then I demanded that the room be purified, and I brought back the articles of the temple of God God the grain offerings and the frankincense. So the idea is Nehemiah is just wanting to get back to do what's written in the law. He really wants to obey the law. He doesn't want to start I love this. This is real convicting. Small compromises. Ooh, that's a big one, huh? Just like, you allow a little bit here, you allow a little bit there. Boy, man, is that something on our hearts, right? That we can really take in today. Hey, do I have a little small compromise there, a small compromise here? And then it becomes something much more bigger, right? As time goes on. There's many things like this. I'm not going to name them all, but I just think of like foods like that. You eat a little bit here, you start cheating a little bit there, and pretty soon you're cheating all the time, right? And that's how it is in almost everything that we do. Man, it's amazing. Now we just get off the beam there, we get off the beam there, and then we try not to get off the beam, and then we become prideful and yucky, and then we become, the piety police, and we start challenging everybody else on what they're doing wrong. And it seems like no matter which side we go, we find error in us. And that's why we need to just continually fix our eyes on Jesus and the gospel of Jesus Christ. Because through our vision of looking at Jesus, He's able to live his life out through us. It's not us trying to live out our life to him, but now it's us surrendering and saying, Jesus, you live out your life through us. Help us lose ourselves in that, and that it's your life through us, a spiritual life, truly, Jesus' spirit within us. And, but notice that Nehemiah doesn't want to compromise at all. And and this is kind of the idea of the Pharisees in Jesus's day too, just so you know. These guys really, wanted not to compromise. Yet Jesus, what does he do? He rebukes them, right? I also discovered that the Levites had not been given their prescribed portions of food, so they and the singers who were to conduct the worship services had all returned to work their fields. I immediately confronted the leaders and demanded, why has the temple of God been neglected? Then I called all the Levites back again and restored them to their upper duties. And once more all the people of Judah began bringing their tithes and new grains, new wine, and olive oil to the temple storerooms. So we see that the whole point of this temple storerooms is to supply the needs for the workers of the temple, and no longer compromise because of economic gain, because they want more money over here, so they're holding back their tithes to the temple, and they're preventing the money that would be generated from their work, their labor, to be given over to help those that serve in the temple. So those people that are supposed to serve in the temple are now back, working their lands and trying to make some money. Pay for your pastors. That's the word. Supply the needs for those that minister to the people in the flock, and do the things that need to be done at the facility. Don't you withhold, and then Nehemiah says that's not good. That's not the right thing to do. You withholding from the body of Christ and from helping those ministers minister. It's not putting those gifted people where they need to be to help further, the mission of the body of Christ, which is to share the gospel of Jesus Christ and to minister to the people. And this is what Nehemiah is getting bent over. So it's a good word to us to make sure that we're doing what we should be doing with our finances. And that's always a good word for us. Sometimes people go, man, I don't like the church. They didn't play the songs I play, so I'm not going to give. Man, rough attitude for sure. Or I'm going to withhold my tithe because, I didn't like that message, or I didn't think this was right, or da-da-da-da-da. Man, that's rough. Nehemiah says you should be contributing. This is where our whole livelihood's at. This is where the culture is. This is where we should be focusing on. This should be the central figure, the central part of our lives, meaning the church, the assembly, right? The temple, this kind of idea. And so, it says, I also discovered, we saw that, it says, I also discovered that the Levites had not been given their prescribed portions of food. We saw that, right? And then it says, this is down in verse 13, I assigned supervisors for the storerooms. And what they did is he appointed different people to assist people and to help out, to make sure the distributions were honest. And it says in verse 14, remember this good deed, O my God, and do not forget all that I have faithfully done in the temple of my God and its services. And in those days I saw men of Judah treading out the wine presses on the Sabbath. They were also bringing in grain, loading it on donkeys, and bringing their wine, grapes, figs, and all sorts of produce to Jerusalem to sell on the Sabbath. So I rebuked them for selling their produce on that day. Some men from Tyre who lived in Jerusalem were bringing in fish of all kinds of merchandise. They were also selling it on the Sabbath to the people of Judah in Jerusalem at that. Another issue that Nehemiah sees, man. So Nehemiah is really doing some correcting, right? We see the different things that he's doing, the various reforms. Hey, we need to make sure that the temple storehouse is used properly. Hey, we need to make sure that people are giving so that people can be working at the temple. And that really becomes that central place for our culture. Hey, these people that are working on the Sabbath, man, not a good thing. He says, so he confronted the nobles of Judah. Why are you profaning the Sabbath in this evil way? I asked. Wasn't it just this sort of thing that your ancestors did that caused our God to bring all this trouble upon us and our city? Now you are bringing even more wrath upon Israel by permitting the Sabbath to be desecrated in this way. Then I commanded the gates of Jerusalem should be shut as darkness fell every Friday evening, not to be opened until the Sabbath ended. I sent some of my own servants to guard the gates so that no merchandise could be brought in on the Sabbath day. You know, money's always the issue, right? People want to work continually. Why? Because money can be made. And this prevented people. It really was a temptation for them to overlook the Sabbath day. And this is something that goes on in our life too, where we really overlook things because of money, right? Hey, there's another day to make money. There's more time to make money. And we think it's like a sin if we don't do it, right? If we take the day off. And that's unfortunate. It's good for us to take time to gather together, to enjoy our God, right? To worship together as a one big family kind of idea. And remember that God has created this day for us. And, you know, every day should be a day where we do enter into that wonderful rest that we have in Jesus Christ. We can rest from our labor, seeking to get into the kingdom of God on our own merit. But instead, we can just rest knowing that Jesus died for us and he has accepted us in him. And that's a good rest every day that you can have. So if you're stressed and kind of, man, you know, maybe we just need to take that rest and just go, hey, God, you know what? You have me today. And Lord, help me. Let me rest in you. Let me find my rest in you. That sounds like a lot of David's prayers in the Psalms. And so what does he do? He rebukes him sharply. He tells him, hey, we're not going to do this. We're going to lock the gates. And verse 22, then I commanded the Levites to purify themselves to the guard gates in order to preserve the holiness of the Sabbath. Remember this good deed also, O my God. Have compassion on me according to your great and unfailing love. About the same time, I realized that some of the men of Judah had married women from Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. Furthermore, half of their children spoke the language of Ashdod or of some other people and could not speak the language of Judah at all. So I confronted them and called down curses on them. I beat some of them and pulled out their hair. I made them swear in the name of God that they would not let their children intermarry with the pagan people of the land. Wow, Nehemiah goes rogue, man. He goes aggro on these people. I mean, he really gets in his brother's face and literally does a wrestling match with him and says, listen, you're going to understand, you know, what has happened to us. You need to know the history of our people. You need to remember that we've been in slavery. We've been taken captive. We've been spread all over the place, taken out of our land. by other nations. Like, you're going right down the same path, and this reminds me of a passage in the New Testament too. It says, if you see basically a brother or sister in the error of his ways wandering away, it says, you go and, save them from that, and, knowing that you're saving a soul, you're bringing someone out of that place of destruction. And there's a couple passages. One at the end of the book of James. You can go to the book of James in the New Testament. Read the last verse of the whole book, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But that the idea is, winning someone back, getting someone back. And you know how it is. It's like when you know someone, man, you can do what Nehemiah's doing, right? You can wrestle them. You can jump on them. You can really take them to task because you know them. You know them well. And you go, man, what are you doing? And you can really have that major powwow, so to speak, that major sit down and really, really hash it out, And it says, wasn't this exact? And that takes courage, by the way, to do that. I certainly want some courage to be able to do that. Wasn't this exactly what King Solomon of Israel led Israel into sin? How he did it. Remember, Solomon married what? Foreign wives. So they knew Solomon. They knew the story that was written in the Kings. So you could see them knowing everything that we've already read in the Bible. So these people aren't oblivious to what we're reading. They know it. And he says, I demanded, there was no king from any nation who could compare to him, and God loved him and made him king over all Israel. But even he was led into sin by his foreign wives. How could you even think of committing this sinful deed and acting unfaithfully towards God by marrying foreign women? One of the sons of Jehoiada, son of Elishib, the high priest, had married a daughter of Sanballat the Horonite, so I banished him from my presence. Remember them, O my God, for they have defiled the priesthood and solemn vows of the priest of the Levites. So I purged out everything foreign and assigned tasks to the priests and Levites, making certain that each knew his work. I also made sure that the supply of wood for the altar and the first portions of the harvest were brought at the proper times. Remember this in my favor, oh my God. So what does Nehemiah end with? The book, hey, be gracious, right? In my favor. Be gracious towards me, God, for me wanting to restore things. Now, Nehemiah's vibe really took hold, and it blossomed in history through other Israelite families, and it trickled down into becoming a group of, I think it's 70 or so leaders, and this became what was known as, later on in history, as the Sanhedrin, the real ruling body of Israel that really wanted to hold fast to the law and make sure Israel never went back into this captivity, into this defilement. And so by the time Jesus comes around, there's a Sanhedrin. There's this group of Jewish religious leaders. There's these strong sects of Israel, of the religious leaders. You guys know of some of them as the Sadducees and the Pharisees. And especially the Pharisees really took hold of that idea of, like Nehemiah, being precept upon precept, making sure that they are sticking to the law of God. And Jesus, when he comes, he has to do his own kind of Nehemiah work of reforming Israel, kind of showing them where they're wrong, where they really got off the beam again, where they got so strict that they really got, what's the word? Hyper. Meaning they really started moving away from the real purpose of the Torah, and got involved in interpretations of the law of God. And so they based a lot of their lives now on different rabbis' interpretations of the law, not necessarily just the law itself. And so Jesus has to correct them and tries to, or does a good job of rebuking them. in a sense, doing a lot of what Nehemiah is doing. Goes into the temple, makes a cord of whips, throws things over right in the temple, literally throws everything over, makes a mess of everything. I'm sure he'd, maybe wrestle some of his friends too, right? What are you doing? Kind of thing. Get him in that headlock. And but Jesus does this kind of, in a sense, pretty aggressive, way of rebuking the leadership of Israel once again. Jesus goes even further to lay down his life for the people, right? So he doesn't just correct them, but he says who he is and why he's come. And this has become, and this, of course, is why he was crucified, because who he claimed to be. God in human flesh, God who would teach in the temple. And here he is, finally teaching in the temple. So we see Jesus really is a lot like Nehemiah too, as far as just bringing a incredible reformation and a fulfillment to the Torah. A heart for the Father, a heart for God. Nehemiah certainly had it. And so we want to have that too, in our life and in our day today. Give us a heart and pray for that favor, right? Remember this in my favor, oh God. Hey, Lord, the things that you do through me, gosh, man, Lord, bless me, And nothing's wrong with that. Nothing's wrong with asking for some favor from the Lord, And, it's interesting, too. Nehemiah also prays in an interesting prayer against his enemies as well. And I think we should follow that lead in a sense that, when we have enemies, nothing's wrong with saying, hey, God, you judge. In your mercy, in your righteousness, and in your wrath, you judge the way you see fit. And just giving judgment over to God, the Father. So if you have an enemy today and, something's on your mind and your heart, you can pray in that way and give that over to the Lord. So very cool. What a wonderful book. We're all powed out once again. So, hey, thanks so much for joining me on the journey through Nehemiah. That was a pretty fun book. And now we get into Esther, which will be the same time of that Ezra, Nehemiah kind of world. Okay? So we'll talk to you guys later. Take care. Bye-bye.